So I'm a technologist, a recovering technologist, and what got me into real estate, I got into real estate backwards, right? So most people do it by doing a single family rental or a fix and flip. In my case, my technology company was growing, and our CEO asked me to lead an effort to build a campus from scratch. And so this was a $6 million campus, custom built, and I was terrified because I told him, look, I haven't even rehabbed my own room, or much less my own home, and you want me to build a $6 million campus? He's like, no, I know a lot. I'll help you. And he did know a lot, but we made a bunch of mistakes, and it was a very hairy experience of running a company for a year and then building a campus at the same exact time. So both a nerve-wracking experience and also a great learning experience. And so that got me addicted to real estate. That was in 2003, 2004. Because we were a technology university. So we were building a campus with classrooms and lecture rooms and, projectors and all those kinds of things, whiteboards, all of that stuff. Very custom, very, very custom, and with lots of challenges because it was high occupancy and the fire department isn't like that. I'm Indian, from Mumbai, came to the US in 1997. Only ever worked at one technology company. They hired me in 1997, and we had a wonderful run until 2013 when we sold the company. By that time, I was a partner in the business, so we sold that company. So 16 years in tech, and then all done. I mean, to me, real estate has always represented a way for me to have a higher quality of life. And for the first 10 or 12 years that I was doing real estate, I was still in technology and just using it to improve my net worth and improve my cash flow situation. And then beyond 2013, it was just all at a professional level. It was an office campus. It was a university campus where students would come in and take education. They weren't living there, but it was a phenomenal learning experience. And so I'm somewhat of a unique, our company is unique in the syndication business because most syndicators are not developers. They buy existing properties and they improve them, right? Some of them do heavy lifts, but they're still not building them from scratch. But my company has two completely separate divisions, and half of our investments go into building buildings from scratch, both multifamily and student housing, and the other half go into buying existing value add. So two completely different divisions, different people involved in those two divisions. And so a lot of why I became a developer was because of that experience that I had with my technology company. Absolutely. I mean, the first few weeks I was like, what am I mean, I'm exactly the wrong person in charge of this. And what I realized was that I was the right person to be in charge of this because I knew more about that business than anyone else. I knew what the business needed. I knew what the business wanted. And I was able to translate that into conversations with general contractors and subcontractors and get exactly what the business needed, and really catapulted our business to the very top. We became pretty much the number one, the big dog in our marketplace because of what real estate gave us. So it's interesting that while most of the folks that are listening to this experience real estate as a way to make money, I experienced it as a way to grow my business. He was my mentor and my boss, right? So he was a CEO, I was Chief Operations Officer, and he basically said, look, Chief Operations Officer, the word operations implies anything that has to do with operating a business. And real estate is part of operating a business. Therefore, it's part of your job. And whatever you don't know, you'll figure out. So as I said, terrifying, but also an incredible learning experience. I just don't think that anybody would ever let me learn on their dime for a $6 million project, right? And that was not leveraged. That was $6 million cash, right? So we did not take a loan for that. The company had money sitting in the bank, so we just spent the company's money. And so it was a very large project. And, I think I was incredibly lucky to be involved in that. And we went ahead after that. Once we realized the value of having real estate as an asset in our business, we ended up with 6 campuses. So the first one was 2003, and the last one I think was built in 2013 or 2014. I mean, to be honest, that was not a failure-related experience. I've had several, and I'm happy to give you examples of those. But that experience really didn't have much of a failure, right? I mean, if there were failures, it was simply that we didn't spec things out to the highest level and ended up getting hit with change fees. But for a $6 million campus, I think paying $50,000 or $100,000 in change fees wasn't a big deal. It was all within our budget. So that was just a very positive experience. I have to say that I have learned more from negative experiences than I have from positive ones, and I'm happy to share those with you if you feel that that's beneficial to your viewers. So we raise money directly from investors. We don't have any capital raisers. We don't have any high net worth people. We don't have any family offices. We directly raise money from a set of investors. There are about 2,600 accredited investors that are registered with us, and currently, with projects that are currently running, about 500 are invested. Are actually invested and actually given us money. The rest are looking at projects. Hopefully they will invest in the future. We'll keep our fingers crossed. But we're a syndication shop just like everyone else. The unique piece of it is that 3 or 4 times a year you get to invest in value add deals, but 3 or 4 times a year you also get to invest in new construction development deals. And that's what's unique about us. So that people identify better with persons than with companies, right? So for example, it's easier to identify with Elon Musk than to identify with Tesla. It's easier to identify with Steve Jobs than it is with Apple, because companies are not, individual, they're not personalized. So the best way to develop a brand is to develop it personally, and then over a number of years, transition it to the company. And so we've already built a brand. We have a large brand. We have 50,000 plus people following us. And so the brand is fully built as an individual. And now we are on the journey of transitioning it from my name to the company's name. And this was way before I became a full-time, real estate investor. I was always very curious about real estate. And so starting 2008, I started doing research and invented a system that allows you to figure out the best cities and neighborhoods in the US. That system is known as Real Focus. So I was a statistics major or a data scientist. So I basically said, okay, you know what? I'm going to figure out what really grows profits. What are the metrics that grow profits, and how do you apply them to figure out the best cities in the US to invest in? How do you apply them to figure out the best neighborhoods? So it took a while to do that, and it was a fun project. There was nobody, there was nothing being sold. There was no viable product. So for years, I worked on that on the side while I worked on my technology business. And once it was released, I put it up on udemy.com, which is a very popular website. It's an online website at udemy.com/realfocus. It's like an e-learning website, right?
Yeah, got it.
And so it's the world's largest e-learning website. And my goal was, if I get a couple hundred people a year coming here, I'll be really happy. And it just exploded, Sterling. It just exploded for me. The course was very good. It was very high quality content. There was no pitch. There was no follow-up. There was no upsell. And so people really enjoyed that because it was pure content and pure branding. And so if you go to udemy.com/realfocus today, you'll notice that currently, just at this time that we're talking about, which is September 3rd, there are 6,000 real estate investors taking the course. The course is the most popular real estate course on udemy.com and has the most reviews. So there's 500 5-star reviews on the course. And so people enjoyed the fact that I wasn't selling anything. And they even more enjoyed the fact that I wasn't actually a real estate guy. I was a technology geek. And so that led to people really sort of, acknowledging what I was doing, and people started calling me to podcasts. They started calling me to conferences. I started to teach those techniques that are part of the Real Focus system. And then because I was very heavily using virtual assistants in my technology business, I transitioned that to real estate and I started teaching that. So today, if you type in the word Neal Bawa, just Neal Bawa, Bawa on the internet, you'll see probably 200 podcasts that I've appeared in. You'll probably see another 15 or 20 conferences that I've presented at, where they've released the conference videos. And a lot of it is really around these two concepts. One, how do you figure out the best cities and neighborhoods to invest in? And second, how do you 10x your business using virtual assistants? Those are the two powerful concepts that I used to build my personal brand. So there's this belief that, people in the US somehow are more qualified or are going to do a better job. In certain cases they are, right? But the question you have to ask yourself is, so I'm going to pay somebody in the US, let's say $50 an hour, okay? And they're going to do a certain job for me. And then, or I could pay, virtual assistants, high-end virtual assistants, $6 an hour, and I could hire 8 of them. And would I get the same value? So what people try and do, which is a completely nonsensical idea, is that they say, well, instead of paying this person $50 in the US, I'm going to pay this virtual assistant $6 and expect to get the same value. doesn't make sense. You're paying 12% of the amount. So what I found to be the case is that instead of paying that person $50 an hour, I get 3 virtual assistants at $18 an hour. I manage them properly. I look at their skill sets. I make them specialized. And a year later, those 3 virtual assistants are massively outperforming that person that was at 50. Okay. The other approach that I take, which is more common to my company, because a lot of people are like, wow, how are you growing so fast, is so instead of that $50 an hour spent in the US, I spend $50 an hour in the Philippines. So what I'm now doing is I'm basically hiring a team of 9 people. And I didn't save any money whatsoever. There was zero saving. In fact, it probably cost me a little bit more because there's costs related to these 9 people, right? So they don't cost you $6; they might cost you 7 or 8. And so if you keep your budget the same, but you're hiring these people in the Philippines, here's the following thing that'll happen. 1 out of those 8 will clearly be a rock star, and you're going to put the other 7. They put them in charge of the other 7. So now the management headache reduces, right? You're not managing them. That person who's a rock star is managing the other 6. Number 2, they are going to be able, you're going to be able to achieve things that you could not achieve with that one person in the US before they got saturated, right? So now you can do new initiatives. You can, for example, believe it or not, in my company, I have a person who's just in charge of Instagram. They don't do anything else. They're just in charge of Instagram, right? That's what they do. They grow it. And maybe they might not work, 8 hours a day. They might work 3 or 4 hours a day. I don't like the jack of all trades concept because I've seen that people don't really grow there, right? So what I try and do is, obviously, like every other company, we do have jack of all trades, but even those jack of all trades are specialized. For example, there's a person, she's in charge of investor operations. When docs comes in, she checks them, she makes sure they're signed correctly. She talks with IRA companies, she sends out receipts when money comes in. I think that's specialization, even though she's an administrator. Now, normally in the US, most companies would not be able to do that because if they're paying $60,000 or $70,000 to an administrator, they expect them to do a lot more. But I can afford to have this one person do this, and she doesn't do anything else. So she's phenomenal at her job. And so a lot of investors tell me all the time, Neal, the response rate from your company is so much better than any other company we've invested with. And my answer for that, between you and me, is simply that I have 5 times as many employees. Yeah. It's crazy that more people don't do this, because the problem is that people are always trying to think of virtual assistants as a way to save money, where they're a vastly better way to 10x your company, right? And so if you, and then there's a lot of people that are like, no, but then, if you specialize them, then you're not getting utility from them. You're not, fully utilizing them. My point is, by specializing, the velocity of everything that your company is doing increases so much that it's only a matter of time before you have to add more people because they're overworked. Right? That's the reality of what happens when you 10x your company using virtual assistants. So I've never tried to save $1 using virtual assistants. I've never managed to save $1 because the vision always was take the budget, design a budget, based on US employees, and spend 1/3 of the money on US employees and spend 2/3 on the Filipinos. Loom is a video recorder that is built into the Chrome browser. We use it several times a day. What we found is that you'll never get the time to write lengthy process documents, and even if you do, they'll go out of sync, and they won't be accurate. So what we do is we basically do these dirty videos, which is just you basically click on Zoom, you start recording, and you say stuff. You can go back, you can undo it, you say, oh, stop, I got that wrong, let's start over again. And here's the columns, here's the rows, here's the report. It needs to look like this, it needs to go into Asana, it needs to go here, you need to put this in Google Drive, blah 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 blah. In 2 to 3 minutes, you'd be amazed at how much talking you could do. It would take you 2 or 3 hours to put that into a document with screenshots, right? So we don't do documents with screenshots, right? Or email. So, but here's the trick. The person, when the Loom video finishes, Loom gives you a URL. You take that URL, you put it into a project management software, never send it via email. You send it to the project management software, and the first line that you put in is, please watch this video and convert it into a document. And if they do a good job with that document, you know that they really understood what you wanted to tell them. When people do that, I see such an incredibly diverse set of answers. I've seen people in the Philippines who basically are just, they write like a paragraph, And then I see people in the Philippines who convert it into a 6-page document with screenshots that they took from the video. They bulletize it, they add headings and subheadings and colors and fonts. And it's like, this person is really structured and organized. I'm going to put them in charge of operations. And they get 100% of what I was trying to do, and then they start to extend it. It's like, this person's very creative. I'm going to put them in charge of things where lots of creativity and gap filling is required, right? And then there's people who basically just send me a paragraph. And I look for the best way to ask them to exit the company. Every standard operating procedure is part of an Asana project. Asana is our project management system, and each project has a designated manager assigned to it. So that person is then responsible for this. But even beyond assigning managers, we do a lot of interesting things. We have a person in the Philippines who every Monday goes through every single person's Asana and checks to see if there are any tasks past due. And then we publish that to the whole company. So you can call that public shaming, public beating, or public transparency, whatever you want to call it. I mean, we're obviously not trying to shame people, but we're trying to basically make it transparent. And they know that if they're the last one with the most past dues for, on an ongoing basis, they're probably not going to be there very long. So they make a very distinct effort to make sure that their past dues are going away. So by the time somebody's been in the company for 8 weeks, they don't have any past dues. My deals really come from contacts, and we don't really do a lot of broker calls. We do a few, but a lot of these deals are coming in through contacts, and it's a challenging time, Sterling. I mean, it's very, I'm not seeing much of a price decline in the industry, which doesn't make sense because NOI is declining, starting March and April, and net operating income started to decline. I don't expect there to be any decline or increase in cap rates at this point in time because interest rates have gone down so much. So I think that cap rates stay stable, but net operating income should be dropping each month as there's more delinquency. I mean, we just heard a few days ago, the CDC basically prevented any kind of evictions in the United States until the end of this year. So I do expect there to be an increase in delinquency, which means that increase in delinquency is a decrease in NOI. So we should be seeing lower prices. I'm not seeing them yet. So I'm just not doing a lot of value add buying yet. I'm still waiting for things to break a bit more before I do that. I think they have to come down. The truth is that in the middle of a recession with 10% unemployment, there's no one is expecting cap rates to go down, right? So we're expecting cap rates to remain stable. They might go up a little bit, but it's unlikely because of the interest rate cut. So if cap rates are stable and your net operating income is dropping, and everyone who gets your T12 is going to underwrite based on that T12, that the last 12 months. So as months go on, as your NOI drops, well, those people then have to basically underwrite on the basis of that NOI. So there is automatic price reduction for each month of COVID. Now, you haven't seen a lot of price reductions yet, and there's a big reason for that. Because right now, a property that's on sale today, that just went on sale today, probably only has July T12s in it. So what that means is the 4 months that were affected are April, May, June, and July. Only 4 out of 12 months were COVID affected. So, that there's not much room for a price decline there. But a month from now, it'll be 5 months affected. 2 months from now, it'll be 6 months affected, right? By the end of the year, it'll be 9 months affected. So Class C does better in a recession than Class A. When a recession happens, all the Class A guys will get screwed and their properties will be empty and we will be making loads and loads of money. It's just nonsense. It's utter nonsense. Somebody said it and then somebody else picked it up and they said it lots and lots of times. But if you look at the last 10 recessions, including 2008, here's what you saw. Class C vacancy spiked by about 3%. And then it took 5 years for Class C vacancy to come back down, or vacancy to come back down to the Class A levels, right? But it took 5 years after the recession started for Class C to have the same vacancy as Class A, right? And Class A's vacancy, which was lower than Class C to begin with, spiked by 2.5%, not 3, 2.5, and then went right back down to where it was within a year, right? So the truth is that you might have to give additional concessions on brand new Class A product in the middle of a recession. But Class A is composed of lots of things, not just brand new construction. Brand new construction is a small piece of Class A. There's 5-year-old Class A buildings, there's 15-year-old Class A buildings. In Boston, there are 100-year-old Class A buildings. And those do just fine in recessions. People still want to live in nice places. It's just you can't raise rents. It's not like Class C people can raise rents. So it's a common perception. There are going to be certain places, certain scenarios where Class C will do better than Class A. But when I look at the United States, there's no evidence that Class C does better than Class A. And by the way, I'm saying this even though I have more Class C properties than I have Class A properties. If anybody looks at the data for the last two or three recessions, it should be obvious to them. So I'm annoyed by the fact that I hear it very often, and I know that everybody that's saying it has just not gone back and looked at the data. I mean, I am, known as the mad scientist, and one of the things that I like to do is I like to hack stuff, right? So, and the most popular video that I have on my Facebook and my Facebook group happens to be one where I'm talking about hacking tomatoes and figuring out the best way to do that. And if this catches your fancy, go to my Magic of Multifamily group and search for the video and you'll find it. But bottom line is that I was trying to figure out what is important. Is it LED lighting? Is it soils? What really clicks? And what I found was that most of the time, the fancier stuff that everyone was talking about and saying this is what works, it made very little of a difference. And I did that by having a planter on the left or a planter on the right, and then kind of doing an A/B test. And what it came out to was 99% of the growth. I wouldn't say 99%. 90% of the growth was not the fancy LED lighting or anything like that. It was simply brand new soil every time you put the tomatoes in. That got me 90% of my growth. So it was interesting to debunk some concepts. So it's a combination of growing tomatoes and debunking myths. Well, I don't have a spiritual or an answer that is kind of very deep. I think we're here to do our best every day. And what I find is there's so much focus that's being put on, the work of the day, that we don't grow to whatever we can be. I think our focus what we need to do is drive ourselves to maximum levels of growth. And that's what we're here to do, to reach our maximum potential. There should be no hesitation. There should be no shame. There should be no feeling of, this is not something that I want to do. Why should there be? I think we're here to reach our potential.
Awesome.